Okay, so that's a doobie, right? Which is
Yeah.
a great name for it.
Oh, that's the name of it, doobie. Okay,
Because of
doobie.
the hemp seed. So there's reference to that, which is kind of cool.
Got it. Okay.
And then also, if you look on the side of the can, the constellation,
Yes.
it's one of the dippers, I
That's
think.
the Big Dipper.
But anyway, that star, one of the stars that's really popping is I think the name of that star is like a doobie. So it has something to do with like a double meaning.
I thought the brightest star in the Big Dipper was the North Star.
Well, maybe it's called a doobie
that
as
true?
well. I don't know.
Polaris, yeah.
Polaris?
I just know that it applies to a star within whatever's on that can. So
But you know, the North Star isn't always the North Star.
When is it not?
Like 25,000 years ago, Polaris was not the North Star. It changes.
Is this true, Todd? You know.
why? No, yes, of course it's true.
Thank you.
I don't question Scott. What do you know when it comes to? I took an astronomy class a long time ago, very long time ago. It was a very hard class.
I failed astronomy like twice. That was a hard class to pass.
You guys at least had the option to take it, man. That's pretty sweet.
Yours is just self-taught.
Have you been in?
No, I was literally just on, something in Facebook the other day. It just popped
gotcha.
up about the Earth's wobble. And, I will tell you exactly what it is. It's about, at Hoover Dam, a piece of artwork that is laid into, like, there's this park as part of Hoover Dam. And it uses astronomy to pinpoint the date of the Hoover Dam's completion, but in a way that all civilizations in the future will be able to figure it out by the math, because the North Star changes. And so 25 or 23,000 years ago, it was different, but this guy did the math, and it's all laid there in bronze and terrazzo and stuff, and nobody ever goes there. And the National Park Service doesn't even talk about it. But John Worthington shared it or posted it or whatever, and it was really kind of a fascinating article.
Can you go see it? Is it open?
Yeah. You can go there, but nobody ever does because it's not part of the official tour, and yeah. So
I hope you're recording that. That was a good story.
Yeah. Wade, what's your degree in?
Economics.
Econ equals art.
Yeah.
So you obviously knew from day one.
Yeah. Is that your full-time job?
Being an artist?
Yeah.
I have a bunch of different projects, I guess. My wife has a business, and we run the local, like, independent movie theater in our town.
What?
And then
now I'm stoked. I'm a big movie guy.
Yeah.
We have a 180, a 90, and a 70. So 3 theaters. The fourth theater is kind of it's there, but we stripped all the seats out, and it's right now storage space for my wife's business.
And then do you show contemporary movies, or is this all throwback stuff? Or
we try to hit the trifecta every weekend. We have a really small community, about 2,500 people.
Because we should mention Bethel,
Maine. Yep.
Bethel, Maine.
Yep. So we try to show a blockbuster, a kids movie, and then an indie. So I think this weekend we have Downton Abbey, we have Abominable, and we have Peanut Butter Falcon. So I guess we don't have an indie this week, but
Peanut Butter Falcon sort of.
We just showed Anthropocene like midweek as a one-off, and we're doing there's like a Roger Waters one-off live performance also. So.
And can you rent it for birthday parties and?
Yeah.
Please.
People do that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then is this like you serve adult beverages there, or is this?
Yeah. Lots of Maine beers, and we make some pizzas. And
okay, I want to go to Bethel now.
Yeah,
right? Yeah, this is so cool.
How long have you had the theater?
It started about 3.5 years ago, and it's one of those things where my wife was looking for commercial space to grow her business, and the only, empty building in town was the movie theater. And so Stephen and I, my collaborator, had actually gotten this grant, one from the Maine Arts Commission, and then another one from this thing called the Kindling Fund, which is a re-grant from Space Gallery in Portland, which is a re-grant of Andy Warhol Foundation money. And so we wanted to do something, we had this project called Proposal for an Appalachian Glacier. And so we did the first kind of phase in this by renting out the movie theater, which was like complete disarray, and then basically creating it was actually a time-lapse sculpture in one of the movie theaters. And then for the first time in 4 years, like, the doors open to the public. We aired out the must, and
was it bad?
It was bad. Yeah, I mean the one of the reasons, like, the theater closed in our town because, like, most small theaters like across America, that transition from film to digital killed theaters. And so all of a sudden you're running along, barely breaking even, and then you have to spend $100,000 per projector to keep going. And so that shuttered the doors of that little theater. And I don't
did
know,
you have to get new projectors?
We got new projectors. And so that was kind of where the story like gets hazy in my memory, because a lot of stuff happened fast. But when we had the art project, we had this public opening. A bunch of people came, and with like a little home projector, we screened the movie Meru. Did you guys ever see that? Oh my gosh,
we went and saw that on the big screen in Salt Lake. Yeah, it's incredible.
It's an incredible movie. Jimmy Chin and like his crew, and they go and
Conrad Anker.
Yeah.
And filmographer, why is his name slipping in my mind?
I can't remember the.
Look it up. All right.
The last, but it's basically, it was a lot of people know Free Solo now, but it was kind of Jimmy Chin's movie before Free Solo.
It's an amazing film.
It was an amazing film, and people told us that it was amazing. It was amazing to be open and to have movies and to have that experience, like that community experience. And there is this other layer where somebody had already tried to reopen the movie theater and failed. And so I think Beth and I were just like felt a little bit, in retrospect, driven by hubris, but we felt like we could do it. And so we just kind of dove into it, and we did a Kickstarter campaign. We got the financing together, which took a lot of work to actually buy the building. And then we did this Kickstarter campaign to raise like $40,000 to buy a projector, which is, we found someone on the West Coast that could do it for 40 instead of 100. And then we ended up raising 80.
Wow.
Which is amazing, in about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And
wow, that's a lot of money in 3 weeks. Yeah.
And so we went from art project in October to buying the building November 30th, renovations throughout the winter, and then opening with a late, we were about 6 weeks off the break, but we opened with Star Wars and The Revenant and on two screens.
That's so
in
awesome.
A completely like bare bones, like I think we had done the floors. We'd stripped all the adhesive off the floors and polished the concrete, and we bought like 3 IKEA shelves and made a concession stand and a
BYO popcorn.
yeah, exactly. Totally.
Oh, shoot.
So yeah, and then it's movie theaters, it's not a profitable business to be in. So it's been a little bit of a labor of love for the last 3.5 years.
Hollywood apparently is profitable.
Yeah, apparently they're doing okay.
Yeah. So it's Renan Ozturk, who who lives in Salt Lake, or used to, and also runs his own. Yeah, he's a filmmaker. Yeah. And notable appearances by John Krakauer and Jennifer Lowe Anker as well. So
good first choice. Now, see, I'm curious, and I know this may be a little off target, but you said another group tried and failed with the theater, and you guys made it work. What do you think was that? Or was the reason behind that? You think it was the community support? Obviously, that was
community
significant.
Support. Yeah.
That's the big step.
Yeah.
So congratulations on that.
Thanks.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
That's such a great story. I'm so glad
I love it.
Beats the hell out of mine about stars.
Whatever. That's how it got started. That's how it gets started.
Yeah. We all have to start somewhere,
Yeah.
Should mention we're chatting with Wade Kavanaugh here in Ogden, Utah, from Bethel, Maine, working diligently on a deadline here with Owen Arts. Has a deadline of is it Friday or Thursday, Scott?
Well, we're opening the installation to the public for First Friday, so it's Friday the 4th.
So an installation project here at the Monarch in the heart of the Nine Rails District. The project is inspired by I want to say the geographical West. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was having this conversation with someone today where, Steve and I have been working together for 15 years, and we approach every project as if we're working with a blank slate. And so, our art practice is kind of grounded in this idea that, do you guys know the philosopher Maurice Merleau-Ponty? He's like he's French.
I can't say I've began to study him yet. No. But,
so he's like,
on the list.
He's a phenomenologist. Okay. And basically everything that he's written and that I've read boils down to this idea that your perception of one space is informed by what you see before you go in that, space and what you experience directly after it. And so there's this kind of thing of this thing that Steve and I call bracketing. So imagine a viewer is walking in off the street and they walk into the gallery and the gallery's empty. What is that viewer bringing into the space with them? You know, what is it what landscape or what ideas or have really informed their sense of beauty? And then, you know, like, what do they see immediately when they leave, and how do they make sense of the experience that was just the art experience? So when we start a project, we think about that empty space. You know, and when we try to start from scratch with materials, with the way that we work, with the way that we compose the work. And for this piece was a little bit for me like a hurry up piece. I think Scott had seen a piece that we had done in Maine in the spring, and has, you know, it's been working really diligently to get 01 Arts into their new space, and the construction of the new space was delayed. And so Scott still wanted to have some excitement in the Monarch before 01 Arts actually opened. And so he kind of reached out, and it was the timing was such that I didn't have time to do the site visit. You know, all those kind of things that Steve and I generally do to you know, when we're making new work. That said, we did do a series of works maybe 7 or 8 years ago that we just called drawings. And so without any, preparation, I guess, we went to Sun Valley and had this mini experience, and then, you know, basically created a drawing, something we called a drawing in the gallery. And then we did a similar thing in the Everglades. You know, we spent a couple of weeks in the Everglades in the national park, like residency system, then went to this gallery in Miami and made this piece that was what we, you know, something we called a drawing. And so that was kind of the framework for me, at least, about how we were going to approach this project. And so,
because it's sight unseen.
It was sight unseen, and to be frank, like, changing. You know, like, we're in a very active space, as you guys know. We've just moved into the Monarch. Like, there's a lot happening around here.
Daily.
Yeah, daily, which is super exciting. And so we kind of, you know, going back and forth, trying to figure out the logistics of the project. I think my wife and I we just had a baby, and we tried to really restructure our lives for this kid.
Congrats on your son, by the way.
Thanks. Yeah.
Cotton, right?
Cotton. Yeah. So we actually have 3 kids. Our daughter Althea was born December 16th, which is the day before my wife's busiest ship date in her business. Oh, so give birth, go back to work.
The next day. Wow. Yep. Yeah.
And our daughter Billy was born 8 hours after we opened the movie theater.
Oh.
And so I just felt like I missed, you know, Beth went straight back to work. She didn't have the time to really, you know, I don't know, process that experience, I guess, maybe. I don't want to speak for Beth, because I'm sure she'll say that, oh, that's bullshit. But, you know, like, for me, at least with Billy, I was going to the theater every night to make sure that that the popcorn was popping, as opposed to, you know, being able to spend that time with this newborn. And so we really wanted to kind of carve out that space so that we could, you know, this is our last kid. So we wanted to have that experience. And then, of course, because we're self-employed, we got kind of through that first couple months, and we're like, well, we really, you know, Beth has been working less, but we hadn't really had any time together. We went to like a family reunion in Portland, Oregon for a week, and that was basically the vacation. Or, you know, we'd gone somewhere in the spring with our other kids before Cotton, but we were like, we need to like be together, you know, for a little bit.
So you're in Utah now, and your family's here.
Yeah. So we decided, we were like, all right, we started looking around. We're like, how much does it cost to buy a crappy camper in Idaho? And you guys had already bought it, you know? and so
this was the one. This was the one. Yeah. Sorry about that.
So you were the one we were competing with.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. You guys outbid us by, I think, 75 cents. And then it just like, we're like, all right, Beth makes these magnetic spice jars, and like she gets hashtagged in, van life all the time. So like just part of her life is looking at all these tiny spaces. And we live, we were in New York, or like we lived in New York forever. And so even living in Maine, like we live in the apartment where we moved that I made as a part of my studio when we first moved back to Maine was 400 square feet. And then
pretty small.
Yeah, we just moved like after, basically for our third kid to, I don't know, 700 or 800 square feet. We're still like try to be pretty compact.
Yeah.
And so we're like, well, you know what? Let's just buy a van and let's do the retrofit and let's drive to Utah so that we have our bikes, so that we're not on a strict schedule, so that we can actually get out and explore these places without the
in the van. There's some pictures if anyone wants to see it on Instagram. Wade Kavanaugh, just Wade Kavanaugh on Instagram, and you had to do some work on that.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. That was like the I don't know if you guys have ever like well, houses aren't as old here as they are in Maine, but every single house in Maine is a piece of shit. And so, like, I mean, if you're gonna
That's
renovate,
one way to look at it. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
If you're gonna renovate a house, you're in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're going down to the studs.
Yeah.
And so, like, after doing a couple of those projects, I was the van seemed like really quick and sweet.
That's funny. Yeah. Yeah, so we need some help with this trailer.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I know a guy now.
How long can you stick around?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So what year? What'd you buy?
We bought a 2014 Dodge ProMaster, one of the high tops, the shorties, the high tops.
You haven't seen Tan Van yet.
No.
So if you're here Friday, we'll pull Tan Van into the Monarch here for van sessions where we put musicians in the van and they sing. But it's a 87 Dodge.
Oh, that's awesome.
Completely original. We haven't messed with it. So
or cleaned the carpet or
all
anything.
the original carpet on the walls, on the ceiling. Yeah.
Yeah. That
was the kind of like the hilarious part of that Craigslist search for the van was like, I'm sure you guys experience this. Like Salt Lake City, Craigslist is probably different than Ogden Craigslist, but like when you're like looking through Brooklyn Craigslist, people are throwing out a West Elm chair. They're selling it for $3 and they bought it yesterday and hated it. So it's like
wild. Yeah.
So like here's $1,000 piece of furniture. It costs $25.
Because they don't want it.
Because they just don't want it. And so like in Maine, it's like you're searching for a van. There's like 3 options. And one of them is like 4 hours away from you, but it has absolutely been preserved since 1986. So it's like, it was probably similar to Tan Van where it's like low with like the portholes.
Yep.
And then full pink carpet, like floor, ceiling.
I think we looked at least to tan and brown, so that's good.
Totally. I mean, it would actually be a good sound recording studio. If you're
it's
looking.
brilliant.
It actually is because of the carpet and everything, and people comment all the time like the sound is great in here. I'm like, totally planned it. Bought an 87 Dodge.
But see, Pink Van would have been a different story and a different hashtag for us as well.
Oh my gosh. All right, so we're also joined by Scott Patria here of 01 Arts. Scott, when did you first see Wade's work?
Pretty early in July, I think, and we had made the decision to go forward with doing an installation this fall, and so I put the curatorial hat on and started digging, and was thank you Instagram.
Really, what do you
artists
mean by that?
get an Instagram page and post regularly.
What, did you find him on Instagram?
Absolutely.
No way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Found some shots.
Was it a certain hashtag? Do you even remember?
Hashtag installation art.
Installation art?
Installation
absolutely.
art. Wow.
And that's how I first, discovered the work and, dug a little deeper and we, started talking. I said, hey, I love
worked.
this, but I have a
work.
really tight time frame. And how available are you? And, it just kind of went from there. But
And Stephen is Wade's partner is not here, so Stephen did some design work back home, I'm assuming, based off of what you sent pictures and live feed video of the space, which we mentioned was changing. And so the space here in the Monarch, now the Monarch building is a 1920s building that is being refurbished. There's going to be a specific exhibit space in the building. This particular
for 01
01, and it's not being utilized for this particular
no
work.
There's a lot of the construction and the changes here at the Monarch have we couldn't really start on our space because of some of the structural things that had to be resolved before we could. So that's kind of put us in the position of, well, we want to be a part of the Monarch, right? We're going to be, some would say the signature tenant, the keystone tenant, right? And it's this whole building's sort of synergistic. Everybody is supposed to feed into and off of each other, and so in talking with the developer, we were given this space in this lobby area to work with and have this installation so that it benefits O1 Arts, it benefits the community, it benefits all the other tenants in the building, so that, come November 1st for the grand opening, everything, insofar as it can be, is a whole piece.
So far, so good.
Yeah, I think it's coming along great, and the project has taken on a bunch of additional layers, which I found really interesting. When we talked originally, I was looking at static images on Instagram, and that would have been okay. But then as we began talking, there was, and Wade, jump in, but there was additional layers of, well, I'd really like to investigate movement and motion and do a video and then work with music. And so why don't you talk a little bit about how that
ballet dancer.
Yeah, we had a ballet dancer named Ashley Richardson, who is local from Ogden, and then a more contemporary dancer, Joe Blake, who just moved from Seattle to Ogden to teach at Weber. And so, when we were developing the idea for the project, Steve and I have done a lot of time, kind of time lapses just as documentation of, our process of making the piece. And that, it's funny that you guys brought up the movie theater at the beginning of this, because we did a very intentional, time lapse I guess it's actually stop motion documentation of the piece, where we would make a movement, then get out of the frame, shot, take a movement, get out of the frame, shot. So it was really slow to essentially make this flow of paper happen that we were using as a proxy for a glacier repopulating the east coast of the United States. And so when we were thinking about this project, everybody listening right now has been to southern Utah, probably.
Yes, probably so.
And so you go and you see these monuments, and they're there, and the weather is wild, but everything around you seems still. And there's a sense of grandeur, there's that sense of stillness.
Yeah.
And there's a sense of kind of desolation and aloneness. And I think that's fundamentally why people go to the desert. And so in my mind, there's a little, people probably still are moved to Ogden or a place like this, so they have access both to the mountains, but also to a place like southern Utah. And so, how do you make an artwork that creates that sense of stillness and grandeur, but then also has this record of process?
So you're from back east.
Yeah.
And you came to, is this the first time in Utah?
I've been here a couple times. Yeah.
So where'd you visit? Did you visit the Wave?
We didn't make it to the Wave.
Oh.
We missed the window to get a permit, and everyone we talked to said, if you show up, you're not going to get a permit.
Yeah.
And so we kind of focused on, we left a little bit late, just wrapping things up at home, and then we made a beeline and got to Fruita, Colorado in about 2.5 days, which for us was a great time. And then so we really just went from Fruita to Green River to meet this guy Dustin, who's the musician that we were talking about earlier, and then south to Moab, Arches, Canyonlands, up into the La Salle Mountains.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and then on the way out, spent the night in Goblin Valley. Got to explore there the goblins, but also into the Slot Canyon, and then we took the long way up to Ogden on I-70 West, where you see the exposure of the swell.
Oh yeah,
which is
and
the most. Amazing. It's like the most mind-blowing stretch of highway that anybody could imagine.
Yeah, it smells amazing. And then up here, Spiral Jetty.
Yeah, I haven't seen Spiral Jetty yet.
Not yet.
That was originally part. Yeah, I drank the beer. Yeah.
I was telling you, it was
totally
the beer.
Counts.
Yeah. It was the beer, not the place. Yeah.
So, geographically, Utah is super diverse.
Yeah.
And so to represent that in one piece of work is probably not easy.
Well, like our work is. I hope our work isn't representational. I hope our work is always going to be an abstraction.
Yeah.
And in this work, for me, the form that the sculpture takes is going to be one thing, but the fact that there's this process that went into it, that there's this, documentation of change is really important. I guess that was the point I was trying to make earlier, is that you go to these places and you sense this stillness, but you're experiencing countless millions of years of process and change, and you're standing on the windy edge, of this place. And so like you're in it. That's the force that's doing the change. We just don't get to experience the actual accumulation that's going to show up in the geologic record. But then fast forward to, this moment in time, that's really where we are. We're at the intersection of human time and geologic time. And so I think like Stephen and I, we take a lot of interest in that moment.
So when you came out west, when you were planning this out, your trip to southern Utah was part of the planning stages.
Yep.
Did that add any sort of extra pressure of what you needed to get out of that experience, as far as suggesting what the next steps might be, or how loose were you able to keep things? The fact that chunk was sort of, filed into the planning originally is really interesting to me.
Yeah.
And how that really shaped what your results are.
It was pretty loose. Do you guys have kids?
I do.
Yeah. So everything's loose.
Yes. You're telling me. Yep. Yeah. You have little ones too.
Yeah. And so, there were things that we talked about, doing, and then there were things that we actually did. And we just tried to be really focused on what we were able to do. And the things that we were able to do were amazing. We saw a lot and not a lot of time.
Any real surprises? Unexpected moments?
Jackalope?
No jackalope.
They're back.
Because you were talking about as far as those moments that shape right before and right after.
Yeah.
I'm wondering that, in terms of your trip,
Yeah. I mean, the surprise, actually, we did the, one of the advantages of driving is we brought our bikes. And so we did the whole enchilada in Moab. And so we didn't totally realize 10,000 feet in Moab is an entirely different environment. That felt much closer to home for us. We got up there in the morning and it was 40 degrees and we're in wilderness, we're in trees. And then we got this incredible experience of going down over the course of 30 miles, basically back to the Colorado River. And you see an incredible amount of biome transformation there. And that was great. It was super hard, but it was great.
What a great moment.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of other things that have really informed this work. I think, I don't know. I think like most art projects and probably anybody that's creative and involved in these things will say the same thing, where all that work you do before a project kind of you reset the day you start.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, and so
that's what you told me.
Doing this project. yeah. I know. Scott was like, well, this, doesn't look like that, and your plan is different. I'm like, yeah, I'm here now. I know what I know now.
Now we're starting.
Scott,
now I think you said,
nervous?
now we're starting. I don't know that I was nervous, but inquisitive. I wanted to know part of the whole thing was for Wade to get to southern Utah and see what he could see, and how would that inform the work, right? I mean, that's part of the process, part of what we were happy to enable, in a sense, right? And
you mentioned to me before the podcast that O1 was enabling Wade to be creative and use this platform as something new, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's getting back to the dance part, right? Yeah. And the video and there was this discussion. I think maybe it really even picked up while you were in transit. We're going back and forth, and we're like, okay, so now we need to find some dancers, and we'll with say 7 days before Wade hits Ogden, right? So we're reaching out to local folks. Shout out to Deja for really coming through and hooking us up with Joe and Ashley then turning them sort of over to Wade and, hey, what are you guys going to do? And then trying at least to get out of the way a little bit. Still wanting to know what's going on, but letting you do it.
I mean, that's a really hard balance. I think with like art spaces, there are places that present work, and then there are places that are incubators for the creation of new work. And that's really hard. If you have a place that's a presenter of work and they contact you about doing a project, it's really hard for us to explain to them that the gallery for us is going to be studio time. And so we're going to treat it like studio time. We're going to show up, we're going to think we know what we're going to do, and then it's going to change because we're really trying to be as active as possible in the process of making that work. And so I don't know, I feel really honored that we're like the first project in the Monarch for O1, and I hope
our first artist in residence, really.
Yeah. So I hope that kind of sets the tone for that element of experimentation going forward.
So when you crumpled up a piece of paper and threw it at your sculpture, is that out of fun, frustration? How real was that?
I think process.
Yeah.
Craft is a dirty word.
I mean, I think I made that joke in that poster. I was like, that the piece that Scott saw was at this place called the Center for Maine Contemporary Art, and we had gotten the kind of the first grant from the Ellis Beauregard Foundation, which it was a big deal for Maine. Like there used to be money from the Maine Arts Commission that was, I think, $15,000 or $20,000 which is a significant push for an artist, and then it went away, and then the woman who used to run the Maine Arts Commission took over this thing called the Ellis Beauregard Foundation, and they established a $25,000 a year grant for artists. And so Steve and I were the first artists to get that. And it was paired with an exhibition at the Center for Maine Contemporary Art. And they, there's a lot of things in flux. Like Stephen was moving from Brooklyn to Portland, Maine, which was like, a big deal for him. He and his wife just kind of took a leap without having jobs yet in Portland. And he was renovating a house and all these things. And we're like, we can't do this exhibition in the summer of, 18, I guess. And the space they had put us in was they have 3 really beautiful galleries. They'd put us in the smaller space. And I was like, this is probably the one time that we're ever going to show here. And for us, like, we travel a lot. It's like we hadn't really done it. Our first piece was in Maine in 2005. My family got to see that. Then we did the movie theater piece, which was kind of just like an experiment. And we hadn't done a piece in Maine for 14 years. And so we're like, when is the big space open? Which is, I can't remember the name of the architect, but it's this beautiful sawtooth roof, with all north-facing light, about 50 by 50 by 20 feet tall, white box. And we're like, the white space isn't, or that, that space isn't open until March of 19. I'm like, perfect. March of 19, coast of Maine, no one's ever going to see this show. We can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
And so Steve and I, for a long time, have been like trying to make that segue for our work, like that can be in the public realm. And so like, let's try to translate our language that we've developed in paper into a new material. And so we chose wood, which is basically what we use for the armature for all these pieces. And then we just kind of went for it. And then we got to the end of this project and we took pictures of it. And all of a sudden we're like being featured in all these architecture magazines and design blogs and all this stuff about like, and like we got asked to be judges on a reality TV show about woodworking. And I'm like, no, you do not understand. I'm like, if you ask me about like what type of joint is that, I'm like, there's like one type of joint I know, and it's probably not that. And it's like, if you're like, you know, so that me throwing the paper at the wall was just like, all right, this is my level of craftsmanship. I'm going to take this thing and huck it as hard as I can at the sculpture, and if it sticks, it's part of it.
I love it.
I think that captured extremely well.
Yeah.
So when people find out you're an artist, like, oh, what do you do? How do you respond?
Oh, I think when people find out I'm an artist, they just assume I'm lazy.
Jeez. No, they don't.
Yeah.
You work hard.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think people expect artists to work hard.
For real?
Yeah, I think, oh, geez, what's it like to have a trust fund? That must be awesome.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah. No, I think people
because
are...
being an artist is really hard.
I mean, there's a lot of
as
things...
far as making a living and...
Yeah, I mean, that element is always hard. Making a living is always going to be hard. I've been super fortunate to be able to do, you know, what I do, and
it's your degree in econ.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Well, plus, I mean, clearly you can fall back on the massive funds of your theater as well. So
That's right.
Yeah.
That's where all the big money's coming from.
Yeah, as long as I can learn to live
You're
off
so
of
lucky
$500 a year, I can do it.
Oh no! Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! All right, Scott. Anything else we missed here tonight?
Well, we did. I mean, we talked about the dance a little bit, but you know, further growth of the project took on sort of a local flavor as well. So yes, Wade is in from out of state as a visiting artist, but once we got the dancers, you know, their local talent involved, and we're sort of co-commissioning new work, I guess I would say. But also as part of that, we've engaged with Kerry Campbell, and he's commissioning a new piece of music based on and in response to the concept of the piece as Wade laid it out and the physical, you know, thing that it is becoming now. And Reese Sweeten is doing new poetry. The same thing, you know, came and I really liked Reese's, you know, he came and just sat in the space for, I don't know, a couple hours the other night.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Reese because he's been here like every day. He just like shows up. You don't really see him, you know, for like 15 minutes, and then he's just like sitting there, like looking, you know, watching you work,
writing in his book, which could be a little creepy, but you know,
yeah. At least he's not taking pictures.
And you know, this is a big project. I don't know how many, you know, square feet, cubic feet, etc.
And volunteers.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get at. I know that we used a lot of volunteers just to twist the 2 miles of paper that are as part of this piece, and that was just material prep to get the texture in that Wade would then use. And then, you know, it's been, I think by the time we're done with this, we're going to have had over 50 volunteers doing everything from twisting paper to putting stuff up to tearing stuff down to stapling to screw gunning to, I mean, this is really a great, you know, we've been using the Articipate hashtag all year, and you know, again, community is really coming through because this piece does not happen in this time frame without the volunteers. So shout out to Ogden and a couple. Erica's, man, she's got I think 20 something hours in on this, which is pretty amazing. So thank you, Ogden, for showing up yet again to you know, facilitate a great art project.
Thank you, Ogden.
How are the those experiences documented?
So we've got, you know, I did some, you know, half-assed Instagram videos and stuff like that, but and also shout out to Circa 3, who is, you know, allowing us to use cameras to document all of this all the time. So the paper twisting was, you know, me and my phone, but once people have gotten into the installation to help build, that's all courtesy of Circa 3, which is pretty amazing.
And so they'll be the one that's captured the dancing, the music. Is this something that we'll be able to follow up on later?
Yeah, I hope so. The I would, you know, I do want to give a big shout out to Circa 3 because they have made this possible, you know, in so many ways where they kind of just like were willing to take that leap of faith too. And the footage I got back over the weekend I was just like, I'm so excited
nice.
about that. And like, I don't know. I feel like that the older you get, like when you really feel like excited about something that feels like completely new and completely fresh, then you end up craving that, more than anything. So, I'm wicked excited to see like the final output of the video, and I really want to put this together into like a 5-minute kind of art video because that documents this paper transformation around these two dancers, and then the final making of the sculpture. So.
Oh, I can't wait to see that as well. And you'll be here on Friday?
Yeah.
This will probably come out after Friday.
Yeah, so unfortunately the podcast will come out after. Now, do you name your projects? Is there like a...
Right now our working title is Unmaking Monuments.
Unmaking Monuments. Okay.
I think there's the more people we talk to in Utah, like the Bears Ears is really hits close to home for a lot of people. And I'm probably going to lose 49% of my audience here, but
49.5.
It's just so political that it's super frustrating how this land can be a part of our cultural heritage and then taken away as if it doesn't matter. We're there. This is the age of empowering people and starting to honor the shoulders on which we stand. And all of a sudden, we have someone trying to take a hammer at people's knees.
And this is this is another thing with O1. Another theme for this year has been arts with purpose, right? So everything we've done at platforms has had some sort of social justice angle, and so we're trying to continue that. So this is more than just doing something cool. This is something cool and big with additional layers of meaning, and we hope to spark, discussion and I don't know that we can get to resolution, but certainly conversation and deeper thought, I think, than maybe some of the audience, not your audience, because your audience is totally cool, right? But
oh yeah,
some of the rest some of the rest of audience around town, like well,
there might be one or two.
We just had our first protest call the other day.
Nice.
Because of what's at platforms right now.
Oh, well, you're winning.
Exactly. Yeah. Winning in Weber, right?
We felt that same way. We do this van sessions with musicians, but we've been doing it in this parking lot with the mural that's around it right up here, right? And I think it took about 3 or 4 sessions before somebody called the cops on us. That came and basically make sure that we were shutting down at a certain time.
Well, you are rowdy.
It felt good. It felt really good. Yeah.
Y'all got a permit?
Yeah.
All about that. And the curfew. There's a curfew as far as that sort of quieting things down. We were kind of right there on that edge, but it felt like we were doing something right.
When someone's like, quiet down that indie rock,
Yes. I'm sorry. All this free live music. We'll turn that down.
Yeah, it got intense. Real intense over a minute.
Those fiddles and guitars,
Scott,
they need to go.
I'm proud of you. This is your first big deal for Exhibit.
It
Excited?
is. It is. I am.
Yeah.
And this is supposed to kind of clue folks in on the aspirations for O1, for the gallery space, and it's not just I've been using the word of flexhibition space, which everybody tells me is crappy, but the idea being that we're trying to wrap, it's not just
Scott
another
comes up with all kinds of words.
Yeah, I have a dictionary, and then I throw it away. But we want to do more than just present visual art. We want to make sure that anything we do is encased in a wrapper or involves, or however you want to look at it, as many other art forms as possible to add those additional layers of meaning and discussion and relevance, for the community, for our visitors. So this is actually, I think, turning out to be a fantastic, sort of intro to that. And in the spring, when we actually open the space, this should give people a taste of what to expect when we open it in the spring.
Well, congrats. That's awesome. And we're going to have to shut the party down here. But wait, I got a question for you. What's your ski quiver look like?
My
Your ski quiver, yeah.
It's about 80% Nordic. I've got probably
like cross country or skate.
Yeah, both. This is
really?
This is embarrassing. I love to ski. And so
I kind of got, yeah.
Yeah. So I have probably 16 pairs of cross country skis and a couple pairs of downhill skis. But I was a competitive cross country skier in college and for a couple years after,
okay.
despite my beer belly now. But I still have, I don't know.
That is an aerobic sport.
Athletic ambitions.
Yeah, Todd.
And then I got one last question for you. So, and this applies a little bit more about phasing out of a project that has loose perimeters and into the next project that has loose perimeters. What's that look like sort of at this point? And then having done this as long as you have with your partner, Steven, and your wife and your family now, any thoughts on what is next?
I mean, transition is get in the van. Let's go.
I like it.
You know,
it's cut and dry, I guess.
Steven,
Yeah.
I'm actually like, we're gonna leave here, and Beth has, spent a very scarce amount of time in Idaho. So we're going to drive through Idaho, go up, see her grandparents in Portland, Oregon.
Oh, nice.
And then I'm going to meet Steven on the 12th.
At the other Portland?
In Seattle, actually.
Oh, Seattle, gotcha.
At the office of LM&N Architects. And so Steve and I were just kind of awarded our first big public art commission.
Oh, congrats.
And so the next year and a half will be kind of orbiting around Seattle, trying to figure out what that looks like. But right now it's funny. I've been thinking a lot about this place in relation to that, because it's like working in a place that's an active construction zone is basically going to be the next year and a half, and trying to envision what this place is going to look like when the piece is actually there. So
this is like the JV team. Is that the deal?
Oh, I don't know.
Warm up.
I'd be very careful to throw that word JV around until I don't know, till you see me play sports.
Wade, thanks so much for joining us here on the Nine Rails Arts Podcast. Again, you can follow Wade at Wade Kavanaugh on his Instagram. Scott, congrats, man.
Thanks. We're looking forward to it. Thank you guys for having us. Todd had asked earlier whether there was going to be any way to see all of this stuff, right? And so just in closing, we will build a page that does link to the process videos, the music video, the new pieces of music, the new poetry, all of that stuff as sort of a, because it's all of a piece for us at the end. So,
well, that's perfect.
Yep.
Thank you so much, gentlemen.